The following program was previously recorded.
This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. In the past 5 years, Korean dramas, or K-dramas, have become more and more popular. U.S. viewership of this TV show genre rose by over 200% between 2019 and 2021. That's according to Forbes. K-dramas include everything from period pieces to political thrillers to sci-fi dystopias and romances. But it doesn't matter what type of story is unfolding on the screen, all K-dramas are known for centering emotion. And some say that this form of storytelling can actually be therapeutic for viewers. And that's what we're getting into this hour. With me today is Jeannie Chang, who's a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's also the author of How K-Dramas Can Transform Your Life, Powerful Lessons on Belongingness, Healing, and Mental Health. Jeannie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, we're very excited to have this conversation. We know there are a lot of K-drama fans out there, but I want to start off the conversation by asking you to help us define, what exactly is K-drama for those who are not familiar with it?
Sure. Very simply put, it is a Korean language television show. So fully in Korean, and then it's up to you if you want to use subtitles, which most people do, but that's the definition.
And can you help us understand, too, what sets K-dramas apart from other types of TV shows? Because we're treating it like it's a different genre, which it is.
Mm-hmm. So how long's your show? No, I can go through all the reasons.
Right.
Well, I think the first thing I want to share that what K-dramas do really well, or Korean dramas do very well, is portray the emotions surrounding the characters. And how they do that is they focus or do really well at the character development. So we always say how we see somebody in episode 1, for instance. By the way, K-dramas are multi-episodes, right? So they're like 16, 8, 16, 20, sometimes 24, but mainly 16 episodes. So you're watching a character or several characters going through their own journeys, whatever that is, through fun, some of them ridiculous plots. Again, we'll talk about the drama part of it. But the focus is on the character. So when people see these emotions of what these characters are going through, people relate to people. So I think it becomes a very relatable process. And I think the emotions, things like sadness to happiness to successes, joys, and traumas, all of them are universal. And so when people see that on screen, even if they're not going through the same exact thing, they relate because that emotion is universal. So I believe that is the key reason why K-dramas really reach such a global audience, because these are universal themes. And then if we're talking well-being, like your emotions, it's very refreshing to see people crying or laughing. And I'm not saying other shows don't do that, but Korean dramas, that's the main focus. It is the character and the character development and the growth. It's not so much the plot. And again, I'll go back to people relate to people. And that is why it's been such a phenomenon.
Well, and I mean, you say phenomenon. I really have been so taken aback at how the globalization of K-dramas have become, and adjacently with other dramas that comes out from other countries. We were just chatting that I'm a huge Chinese drama fan myself, and there's some paralleling with the two genres that we can get into a little bit later. But I mean, if you told teenage Catherine in high school that you were going to see East Asian drama popularized on a mainstream streaming platform, she'd be like, are you crazy? There's no way. But the fact that we have so many options today, it continues to blow my mind. And with sort of what you just shared in terms of differentiating the difference between K-dramas and other TV shows, does the storytelling in K-dramas differ from Western dramas in any way?
So I can answer that based on all the social media followers I have or people who've been on my K-drama tours,
Sure.
they'll say, heck yeah, they differ from Western dramas. They what they love about it, and let's go back to the fact that you said this, a teenage cat would have seen, would be so, think it's unbelievable for people to say, by the way, in decades later, people are going to love C dramas and K dramas and Thai dramas. What I think is very unique, the very thing that I struggled with growing up is my own culture. And I bring this up because this is how K dramas have helped me. And so the very thing I struggled with was family pressures, family expectations, or family conflict. The very things you see in our beloved K dramas. And they're outlined so well. And Asian culture is very much about the collectivists, right? The collective community, the family, the group community, the neighborhood. And do you know that is what Westerners actually love? They'll tell me they find it refreshing that they see the focus on families. And I'm thinking, really? And so I, as a clinician, it still is surreal to me that I even got to write a book on this, right? That helped my own mental health. But the fact that people tell me, Jeannie, I stopped watching Western shows. I'm like, really?
Like, wow.
Well, me too, just because I don't have the time and I'm focused on K dramas, but they say, no, I can't watch them anymore. I see a Korean drama or even, as you said, a C drama, and I am blown away by just what they say is the core values that they really enjoy. Now, mind you, it is K dramas have become a phenomenon, especially in COVID. And let me go back to why people thought Western shows, they're just done with them. And I don't want to, I'm not insulting Western shows, right? There's some excellent ones out there. But overall, they said they turned to K-dramas at a time when the world was in a pandemic, an epidemic, a health epidemic, and we were on lockdown, right? We were all in lockdown, stuck in our homes. Netflix was right at our fingertips. So folks were like, I'm kind of tired of what's happening in the US or what's happening in my country. I'm stressed out. I need something new. They happened to see Crash Landing on You is probably the one that was most famous that came out, and they watched it. But what hooked them in? Because you have to be drawn to what you're watching. It could have just been a K-drama. They're like, whatever, Crash Landing, it was fun. No, they loved the fact that they saw brotherhood, familyhood. They also saw family trauma, which is hard to see, but then they saw how families reconcile and forgive. And again, you don't see that such in depth in these Western shows. And so again, without insulting these Western shows, Westerns have told me I can't watch them anymore. I want the focus to be on something that I don't get to see often. So again, Kat, as a clinician that studies mental health and identity, I love when I hear that they actually appreciate the core family values that plagued me growing up, but has made me appreciate who I am, hearing from people who are non-Asian and had no experience with this growing up, but then have come to not only love Korean dramas and or C dramas or even Thai dramas, they've come to love Asian culture. And so that that's the phenomenon there. It's not just the dramas they're watching.
Right.
Tourism has just boomed in South Korea because of these dramas. So it goes much deeper just than a show and entertainment.
Well, and I think what really struck me too is what you were saying, because I think this aligns with the popularity and what you're hearing from your followers or your readers and listeners and whatnots is the universality actually of the storytelling. Is just Western and Eastern just has a different way of telling those stories, and it just kind of it shows me because it used to be the teenage cat. Like I'm Taiwanese American, so I always was thinking that, okay, well, only an Asian American will be interested in that. Or it's the other direction too, where people assume because I'm an Asian American, therefore I must enjoy this Asian thing. And so you mentioned, it's not just Asians who are enjoying this, it's also Westerners. I remember the first time a Western person told me that they're a huge K-drama fan. It blew my mind. And I was in my early 30s when this happened. And so that's a little late into, I think, your life in terms of having that sort of revelation, I think, in a more personal standpoint. And so that was a really big moment for me, realizing that how global this has become. And then which we're having this conversation because it's so big and everyone and their grandmothers are watching some sort of K-drama.
Yeah. I will say everyone by now has heard of a K-drama, or they know what the word K-drama means now. And I will say it is thanks to Squid Game. Squid Game, the global popularity of Squid Game, where it literally what won couple Emmys as well, made history. Not just for Asian Americans, but just in general, just in entertainment, people wanting to see something that was not part of their culture, if that made sense. That was
Sure.
huge. I always do point out Squid Game now. I don't necessarily recommend Squid Game for your mental health, but it
Right.
is very entertaining, and I did watch it. I also had to watch other fun things with it, another fun K drama. But what it did was catapult it to global, stardom, which was cool. And it's because of Squid Game that I can come into corporate America or these corporations and go, by the way, yeah, so I'm here to talk to you about stress management, but I'm going to show a couple K-drama clips. And now I have that confidence because of Squid Game, because people will know, one, oh, K-dramas, you mean like Squid Game? And then two, they're more open to things now
Mm.
because of it. And even if they don't watch Korean dramas, I do not assume everybody does, even though they've heard of it. I love the, I guess, openness that I didn't see growing up. And so that is, and that again, I study mental health and identity. Those directly correlate. So when I do see someone like rural Alabama, I can give an example, I would never dream of falling in love with the Korean drama is on my tour, right? On a K drama tour that I did this year. And I'm like, what? Like, how'd you discover K dramas? It's what I said in my book. They were at a time in COVID, stressed out and needed something to comfort them. And that happened to be in the form of K dramas, which is why I tie them to mental health.
Well, and I want to ask you more about how you're tying the two together, but rewinding a little bit back is when did you discover K-drama? What drew you to them?
Oh, goodness. So, and that's why you hear me talk a lot about my own journey because that's what makes it so authentic. But yes,
Right.
did I just say 20? No, 1992. I was going to say 2092. No, 1992. I was 18. And so I date myself a little bit, but I already knew about K dramas back in the day because
Mm-hmm.
back in the 90s and late 80s, they were like very historical and boring. That's to me. That's the younger Jeannie Chang, back then it was Jeannie Bay. But then 1992, I was at Yonsei University in Seoul, studying in a Korean language program right before I entered my freshman year at NYU. I met a bunch of other Korean Americans from across the US, and there happened to be a Korean drama playing in the dorm room. I won't forget this. We're walking by, and I'm like, wait, guys, what's this show? It's kind of cool. Wait, I think it's Korean because we're in Korea, but it was a trendy drama.
Mm.
And it was a K drama, and it's called Jealousy in English, in Korean, Chultu. But it was a huge phenomenon back then in 1992 in Korea. It was the one that trending at the time, a love story, but a best friends to lovers love story. And what hit me was where at the first time for I guess ever, I felt I don't know, seen,
Mm.
represented, and I saw this cute little girl that I wanted to be, who was probably maybe 10 years older than me in the show, and I went, "Oh my goodness, she's kind of cute. She's cool. Oh, the guy's cute." And things that you see that you want to see that help you feel like you could become something like that. And all of a sudden, my culture looked different to me. I went, "Wait a second. I need to discover a culture I really chose not to know growing up until then."
Mm.
So age 18 was when I had a glimpse of my very first K drama. I was sucked in immediately. And then that was the beginning of the end. No, I'm kidding. That's when I started watching them.
Right.
And somewhere along the way, they became such a form of my self-care, which is why they were easy to bring into my work, which we'll talk about. But I absolutely love what they did to me in that very first moment at age 18 when you're at that age about to start your college life,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm like, wait a second, I don't kind of know who I am. I'm a second generation Korean American, but what does that really mean? And it's through a traditional Korean show, a Korean language show that taught me that. And that's why they're super special. And to this day, the Surrealness Cat is me using this
Right.
to teach non-Asians about mental health and identity. That's surreal.
Well, I mean, the surrealness for me is adult Kat having this conversation about connecting K dramas and mental health. That's definitely we're having a lot of moments here right now.
Yes,
where,
we are. Big
both
moments.
both of our teenage selves cannot believe that this is happening. So we're really in the parallel universe right now, essentially. So I mean, here to talk about how you incorporate K dramas into your work as a therapist. So how did that start?
It started very naturally. So because again, they were my self-care, and I was at one point a stay-at-home mom, busy with 4 young kids and watching K-dramas to get through, right? And so I remember learning so much along the way that I was thinking, gosh, these are so helpful. Someday I'll use them as lessons. I remember thinking that. Well, in a therapy session, many years ago. It was a very tough. Therapy is not easy. As a therapist, I'm going to tell you now. As a therapist, it's difficult sometimes leading those sessions, and it was like a gridlock between a mother and a daughter. And I thought at the moment, oh my goodness, I could end the session now because it's not going well, meaning it was like a screaming match. Or I thought I'd pivot. And how I pivoted was bring in a Korean drama. I just said, hey, okay, this isn't going well, guys. Let's just acknowledge that. But here's something new. Let's have you watch a show. And then you see the teenage daughter perk up. Like, what? TV? And I said, yeah, what do you think of Reply 1988? It's a Korean drama. And they're not Korean American. And they were like, oh, that sounds interesting. I go, I need you to see it. I actually asked them to see the last episode. And that was just a homework I assigned. I just had to pivot and I kind of explained the whole story. And they're listening. And why it's fascinating right there is me sharing someone else's story. I didn't share their story, which is already too hard. I shared someone else's story. They were like, okay, that sounds interesting. And I want you to watch. I said, I want you to watch together. Well, they came back, watched the whole thing. It's a 20-episode drama. And what was interesting was I knew I was onto something then when they went, yeah, so it was uncomfortable for me to explain to my mom, hey, mom, you're like that. Mom, you do that. And then the mom's like, no, I don't. But then mom going, that's kind of sad to see. What it did was show people a portrayal that's not about them, but in every way is about them. It's just they can separate themselves. That process I say in my book is called externalization. They can go, wait a second. Oh, I can relate to that, but it's not me, so it's easier for me to see it and process. And then the mom was saying the same thing, going, "Hey, you're the teenager that shuts me out when I'm trying to be close." I was seeing like a miracle happen,
Right.
and that's when I went, "I am onto something." But it was far and few between that was well before the pandemic, and then I used it again in the pandemic. I'm sorry, for an in-person workshop before the pandemic in front of college students, where I also had to pivot, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm grasping a straw. Here is a story, Boys Over Flowers. If you have seen that, Cat, it didn't date well, by the way. People would say, no, I don't want to watch that now. But I talked about the contention between a mother and son, and people related to that. And then I explained the story. And then that pivoted the whole conversation. I didn't have to show a clip because I didn't have a clip ready, but I just shared about it. And they went, oh, yeah, I relate to that. And that's when I went, I'm onto something. And then it just naturally became a part of my work at the start of the pandemic when everybody was depressed. And I was working with so many college students online that I said, hey guys, this is kind of depressing. Let's do something fun. Let's watch a K-drama together and analyze it. They're like, what? I go, yeah, let's do it. And so we did. We watched Startup. It's a 2020 K-drama. And I was onto something. It was the college students that went, you need to do something more with this. And here we are, 4.5 years later?
I love the analysis of it and it's funny, I had a rediscovery of C-dramas because I watched a bunch of them growing up. I was in a culture where that was really common. I lived in Taiwan for a couple of years, so that's the thing to do. But when I came back to the States, that sort of disappeared for a while. You're focused on getting your life together and all that jazz. And as you said earlier, you're 18 years old. What is happening? Who am I? Where am I? There's a lot going on. So C-dramas was not on my mind, but it really came out of nowhere for me in sort of the 2021, so a little bit post-lockdown sort of time frame where I think I subconsciously was looking for something different. And I think a lot of first gen, second gen Asian Americans were also going through sort of lots of revelations during that time. And I think I was kind of caught in that wave, and I was on the C-drama wave versus K-dramas. I mean, I have watched a few K-dramas, but it kind of had a very similar impact for me where I did not realize I needed to see people who looked like myself. I mean, they may be in period pieces. I'm certainly not wearing those costumes going to work. But there is, the adult version of myself realized the importance of seeing somebody who looks like me on screen. And so having that sort of experience as an adult has been very interesting over the last couple of years. And another thing that I think K-dramas and C-dramas have parallels here is K-drama audiences tend to have a more female majority audience, and that's according to Parrot Analytics. And many of the writers of K-dramas are women. And I found that similar with Chinese dramas. For a place that is still very much patriarchal, a lot of the stories are very female-led. And
Yep.
they have a male lead, but most of the storylines actually take it or leave it. They don't really technically need the male lead. They can still very much carry the story. And I have a
Yeah.
lot of male friends who actually started to enjoy that. And in fact, I just recently watched Crash Landing on You, so I'm a little late on this train, but it was recommended to me by a male friend who
Mm.
absolutely loved it. So do
Oh,
you
yeah.
find that your male clients can learn and benefit from K-dramas as well?
Hands down, yes, they can. Some of my favorite cases are just contain those with a spouse or a partner, a male partner or a male spouse that actually says, by the way, I saw this and I realized, wait a second, I'm not very romantic to my wife. And I went, because we know the rom-coms out there in
Right.
K-drama and C-dramas, they go a little bit over the top. That's why it's called a drama. I always
Mm,
tell people that. But that's what we appreciate about it because it's fun to watch and see those portrayals. And I've heard some, especially married folks that say, we just learned how to communicate better by watching this drama. And then we talked about things we never saw before because they saw it in a drama. And so I hear that and like my heart drops going,
mm,
this is why storytelling is so powerful. So, and then people will say, well, Jeannie, other mediums have storytelling like that. I'm like, they do. And I'll be like, I'll hesitate without insulting other kind of mediums, but I'll say, but what these dramas do well though, because they're written by women, I would say Korean dramas, 95% overall written by women, they come from what we say is the female gaze instead of the male gaze, right?
mm.
So you see something very different than what we see growing up in Hollywood, where it's all coming from that male gaze. And so that's really important to point out. I believe that is a lot of it. They're able to write in those emotions that otherwise would be lost in those little moments where they ask the actors, by the way, show that you're tortured, right?
Right.
We see that torturous feeling and we feel it. And so when I hear from these males that go, yeah, you know what? Here's another thing I'll hear. I realize, wow, I have some unresolved things,
Mm.
from my past. And I didn't have a good father figure. And then I saw a good father figure in this K drama. And I realized, wait a second, I didn't have that, number one, but I can be that. So I love those kind of stories. And so those are just the beautiful things that come out of people who tell me they watch K dramas or when I assign them homework. It's my
Right.
favorite thing to do.
Well, I want to do
Yeah.
that homework.
Yeah, it's when
Well,
I have the homework and then you see their face.
right.
I'm like, not the homework you think, though.
It's the
Watch
fun
something
kind.
on TV. I'll say, like, it's to watch Netflix. They're like, oh, okay.
Well, my
Yeah.
husband's going to be one of the first, one of the people who will say that actually over the last 3 years that we've been watching certain dramas, both C dramas and K dramas together, that I think now his like top three favorite shows of all time are all either C dramas or K dramas. So it's been
I
a
love
pretty,
that.
yeah, it's been a pretty life
Yeah.
changing experience. And it's kind of fun doing it in a collective way, not just with your partner, but also with your friends and family. And so,
Oh,
like, we've been talking about this sort of through our own lenses and different perspectives and backgrounds. But can you talk to us about Korea's perspective on mental health? Is there a stigma around talking about struggles with things like anxiety or depression? Is this changing at all? Or, does that show in K dramas? Does it reflect in the culture within itself?
sure. A very multifaceted question. So I'll start with historically, yes, the stigma runs deep in Korea. And I would say just in Asian culture, talking about mental health. They hear the term mental health and they're like, huh? And in
Right.
Korea, I would say even as recently as 2022, when I was there talking about my work, I was planning to do something with K-dramas and mental health as in a book. And I talked about it. I would see people jump back like they didn't want to talk to me.
Mm,
They're like, oh, you said mental health. You had me at K-dramas, but I would say 2024, this particular year when I go, because I'm there a lot, I'd be like, oh, yeah. So you know what I do, right? I joke about it. I analyze K dramas from a mental health perspective. They're like, tell me more.
mm,
That's 2 years of a shift in perspective. So they have come a long way and they're still along that ride. I would say they're behind in the sense of where US culture is a little bit more open to talking about that. They
sure.
are improving. What we see in the K dramas is more dramatized, meaning their K dramas a little more advanced than what I'm seeing in Korean society. But I believe that's why writers are writing it. They want to see this, and they also believe it's happening. So as I'm seeing a K drama, I'm going, this is excellent. This is so well done, mental health wise, mental illness wise. They're two different things. I'm very impressed with the way they portray it in K dramas
Mm,
that I believe it's starting to impact Korean society because I see it where I've seen Attorney Woo was a phenomenon globally, but also in Korea where people were like, okay, like, what is this? A highly autistic person. Autism had quite a stigma it really shifted people talking about this disabled community. They'd be like, you know what? We need to do better. And I heard this and I saw this and I went, wow, this is from a drama. And
Right.
so, yes, Korean society is shifting. It's moving in the right direction. Still a long way to go. But overall, mental health, even in the US, it's hard to talk about. It's
Well,
not easy, right? It's not
right.
easy to talk about stress, anxiety, and depression. But I do feel like the dramas in itself are probably the biggest catalyst in Korean society to have these conversations. And that is another reason why I can't believe I didn't tell you this, why I also bring it into my work, because they're a great icebreaker. Like,
Mhm.
what a great way to be like, hey, so instead of me saying, yeah, this is depression, I mean, it's depressing talking about depression, but I'll be like, there's a story about this woman that went through this, cancer journey and the blah blah. And I share a story from a K drama, and I'll be like, by the way, this is from a Korean drama. They're like, huh? It's a great way to break the ice in Korea, everywhere, and that's another reason why I do it, because mental health is not easy to talk about.
I mean, what are some of the first questions you ask your friends when you haven't seen each other in a while? It's like, oh, hey, what have you been watching?
That is so funny. It has become, what have you been watching?
Yeah, right?
And my title, you kind of repeated it. You said my title, but there's a reason why the subtitle is Powerful Lessons on Belongingness and then Healing and Mental Health. But I led with belongingness because what Korean dramas have done, and also C dramas, and these dramas, more than Western shows. Okay, I'm just going to say that based on my research, the belongingness in this global community is also surreal. It blows me away, the closeness, because what we're talking about are conversations like, hey, we saw this show called Our Blues and there's a clinically depressed person there. I went through that too. And then someone going, me too. That's the belongingness. The shared experiences are so powerful and actually very essential to our mental health.
Hmm.
More than anything else, I feel like you need to feel like you're not alone. And that's what these K dramas have done so well, from Africa to Alabama, right? To Europe, to Australia. I see it all. And I think, to me, that's the biggest benefit of what Korean dramas have done. Brought together this world in a time of adversity and chaos and made it a little smaller and close knit. And there's that belongingness there. And then it leads to healing and mental health. And then I just want to end with one thing. These K dramas, they can help you, but at the end of the day, I still need you to live your life. Like,
Right.
meaning, watch these K dramas to help you live your life, but don't escape through them and stay there. That's
Sure.
always my caution
Well,
thing.
I call
Yeah.
them my emotional support dramas. Does that work?
Yeah, exactly. Emotional
Okay.
support. Ooh, I love that. Yeah,
Oh,
emotional support.
oh,
Exactly.
okay. Well, that makes me feel better about myself already. So great. Well, thank you so much. You've been listening to Ginny Chang, who's a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's also the author of How K-Dramas Can Transform Your Life, Powerful Lessons on Belongingness, Healing, and Mental Health. Jeannie, can't thank you enough for joining us on Where We Live today. It was really fun.
Thank you.
Coming up, we'll hear from members of a local K-drama meetup group. Their shared love for the genre has helped them build community and connection, and even taking them on trips across the globe. And speaking of the globe, Steph Wong writes from us from Washington State and says she loves that K-dramas blend various genres together, and many main characters are presented as everyday people, which gives a semblance of normalcy. She also loves the music, how healing the shows can be, and highly recommends the shows My Beloved Summer and Hospital playlists. Tell us your favorite K-drama or C-dramas. We want to hear them. 888-720-9677, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live.
You're listening to a broadcast of a previously recorded program.
This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. Korean dramas, or K-dramas, are all the rage these days. And as we just heard, viewers can get so much more out of these TV shows than pure entertainment. Here in Connecticut, K-dramas are even helping build community and connection. Joining me now are two members of the South Windsor K-drama meetup group. First up, we have Sheena Williams, who's the current organizer of the group. Hi, Sheena. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And also with us is Evelyn Angry Smith, who's the founder of the South Windsor K-drama meetup group. Hi, Evelyn. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks very much for having me.
And a reminder for our listeners that we want your K-drama and C-drama recommendations. Give us a call, 888-720-9677, or leave us a comment on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. So Evelyn, I want to start with you. You founded the South Windsor K-drama meetup group back in 2015. Give us an idea of what led to that decision.
Well, I thought about this and I realized that my love for two ABC soap operas kind of led me to K-dramas. I know that sounds strange, but back in 2012, these two soap operas that were beloved by myself and my family always provided an interest and conversation point with my mother and myself. And so they were very important and they got canceled. And there really was some grief involved in that. And I happened just to be looking at Netflix one day and stumbled across a Korean drama, which became my gateway drama, entitled A Gentleman's Dignity. And it was about, urban professionals for male friends in their 40s. And I thought originally that maybe it was like similar to Sex in the City. And it turned out not to be exactly like that. Not as good or anything, but just fascinated me by the relationships and the cultural differences in some of the things that happened in this story. Confused me a little bit. Things that they considered to be scandalous. So it just really led me down the rabbit hole. And so as a result of that, I looked around for other K-dramas to watch. And at that time, the two main platforms were Drama Fever and Viki. And so I found a lot to be of interest, and I just started watching them and started watching less of, Western television. And I got very excited about, K-dramas. So I thought there had to be other people out there who were interested as well. I couldn't find anybody at work who really wanted to listen to me talk about K-dramas. So I found out about meetup.com and I thought, well, why not? And so that's what motivated me to start the South Windsor K-drama group.
Well, I think that's an amazing journey, and I wonder if it resonates with a lot of people, certainly with me, because it's a little bit of how I discovered too. It kind of came out from nowhere in some sense, and then this rabbit hole is still spiraling, as right. We know. And Sheena, I would love to know how, what was your discovery? What was your K-drama introduction?
Yes, so Korean music was actually my introduction to Korean culture back in 2011. At the time, I was working full-time and also going to UConn Law School at night. And so I spent my evenings and weekends studying and doing homework. And I found that if I listened to music that didn't have English lyrics, it was much easier for me to focus and study while listening to music.
Sure.
And I listened to Pandora, which recommended different world music to me. And I found that I really, really loved Asian music. And as a kid growing up in the 80s and 90s, I loved Boyz II Men, R&B, and a cappella music. And I found a group. It was a K-pop group, DBSK, that was only around from 2003 to 2009, but they have several outstanding a cappella songs. And they were actually the first K-pop group to reach number one in a different country's music charts. So they reached the number one in Japan, and they were the first Korean group to do that. And they're still very special to me because of the music that they made. And I started watching K-dramas because a couple of them, after they broke up as a group, started to star in K-dramas.
That's an amazing journey too, and I like how different that the experiences have been that brought you all together. So Sheena, how did you find out about the K-drama meetup group?
In 2016, I was working and living on my own in an apartment in Manchester, and I discovered meetup.com and I typed in K-pop. I found the K-drama meetup group and I went to one of their in-person events and I met Evelyn, and the rest is history.
Oh, and Evelyn, can you talk to us about the evolution of the club? Because you have quite a few members, about 500 members, I think, from all over the world. What was your first group meeting like?
Oh, well, very different,
Mm,
very different from the current ones. Um, my first, first of all, it was very new to me, so I
right.
had to learn as I went. And certain things, I limited scheduling these meetups for once a month because I figured that's what I could handle. And I wasn't feeling comfortable enough to have strangers in my home yet
Mm,
at that
hmm.
point. So I scheduled the first meetup at my local public library, rented out their AV room, and just kind of figured we would get to know each other and maybe take a look at one of the current dramas. And I walked into this room and there was one person there. So
Classic.
the first, yeah, the first the first meetup wasn't exactly a success, but it turned out this young man who was so interested and interesting as a person came to be one of my really good friends. And we're friends to this day. Um, and we just, got to know each other. And then I'd say the first maybe three meetups, they were very small. They were always in person, and always at the library. And then we decided we were going to do something a little different. So we started to eat at local Korean restaurants. I think we had all of them in the Hartford area and some in Massachusetts. And then it led to things like having movies and potluck nights at my house and other members' homes. And that led to like looking into Korean culture a little further. We started to have annual trips to Koreatown in Manhattan. Um, one year I got in touch with the organizers of the annual Korean parade and festival in New York City. And she invited our group to be part of the parade.
That's amazing.
I mean, so,
I mean, you
you
probably
know,
weren't thinking about that happening when you started this meetup group, right?
never, never. And of course, we all felt too uncomfortable to do that, but members did go to the festival, and that led to like annual visits to, um, as I said before, Koreatown. And, we really immersed ourselves in Korean culture, went to Norabang, ate at a bunch of great restaurants and stuff. And, we did all sorts of things. We had holiday meetups where, there were themes, played games. And this is how things progressed until COVID happened. And then at that point, things changed and everything went online. And I pulled back on my participation because I was on to something else by then. So Sheena can take it from there.
When I was just gonna ask Sheena that, we heard from Jeannie earlier that there's so much diversity within this group. It's not really what you expected to be if you had any expectations. And like she said, from Alabama to Africa, there's all kinds of different people who are interested in this genre. So can you talk to me? Who are the members of the K-drama meetup group? Is it from people of all different backgrounds and cultures, like reflected in the group?
Yes, absolutely. And you're right, Kat, we have over 500 members from across the world. We have men and women of all ages and backgrounds and locations. We have virtual weekly events where we actually watch K dramas together or watch K movies together. And about once a month, we also have an in person event that's either in Connecticut, Massachusetts, or New York, because we have many members that are in Manhattan. And so virtually, we've had people from South Korea, China, Singapore, Nigeria, and Canada join us. Uh, Most of the members, though, are not that active, but we do have a well-sized core of very active members who join us virtually or at in-person events.
And I think it sounds like a theme here too is a lot of unexpected things, unexpected new passions or experiences. Would it be fair to say that this group, and just by watching, when I say just, there's quotations around the just, is it has widened your friendship circle, Sheena?
Yes, it has. And so I think about my close group of friends, and most of them are from this K-drama meetup group, and I met them in my 30s. And so that's sort of unique, and I really cherish that. And I actually met someone from this group, good friend of mine, who ended up moving to Miami. But her and I have traveled to South Korea together,
Wow.
Japan. We went to Machu Picchu in Peru in October, and next year we're going to Mongolia and back to South Korea in July.
Wow, that is so
So she's my
cool.
travel buddy.
I mean, I'm assuming that was not expected.
No, not at all.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm sure that's very inspiring, I think, it was very inspiring for me to hear, and hopefully it's inspiring for our listeners as well. You've all been listening to Sheena Williams, who's the current organizer of the South Windsor K-Drama Meetup Group, and you're also listening to Evelyn Angry Smith, who is the founder of the group. And coming up, we'll be diving into some K-Drama recommendations, but here's a couple to leave with you before break. Janae Spinato, who's our amazing associate social media editor here at Connecticut Public, says her favorite K-drama is Tae Jang Jium. She says is the fictionalized story of the first female doctor in Korea and how she works her way up from being a cook in the palace. Janae says this show has everything. That's all in caps, by the way. Forbidden love, murder mysteries, gratuitous scenes of delicious food, tear-jerking female friendships, medicinal tips for herbs, and a love triangle. So if those are things that you enjoy, check it out. We'll have to check that one out for sure, Janae. And also 2 great recommendations from listeners on Facebook. Lee Young recommends It's Okay to Not Be Okay, which delves deeply into mental health. And Weenie Wong recommends My Mister for the incredible writing, storytelling, and character development. Tell us your favorite K-dramas or C-dramas, 888-720-9677, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live.
Repeated that only embraces me.
You're listening to a broadcast of a previously recorded program.
This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. This hour, we're talking about Korean dramas, also known as K-dramas, including how they're bringing people together here in Connecticut. I'm joined by 2 members of the South Windsor K-Drama Meetup Group, Evelyn Angry Smith and Sheena Williams. So I want to jump straight back to the conversation. Sheena, do you remember the first K-drama you ever watched, and what was it about that drama that spoke to you?
Yes, the first K-drama I watched was a historical romance comedy that came out in 2010 called Soon Kyun Kwan Scandal. And it was about a young woman whose father had secretly taught her how to read because at that time in Korea, girls were not typically taught how to read. And she was so brilliant that she dressed up as a boy and passed a very difficult entrance exam to get into Soonkyun Kwan, which was the top school in Korea, and of course, an all-male school. And I just love the story, the music, the camaraderie and antics of the group of friends that were in that school together. And I also really enjoyed how conniving and scheming the villains were on the other side of things.
There are definitely some pretty intense villains in K-dramas that I've experienced as well. And Evelyn, do you have a favorite K-drama, and what was it about that particular one that spoke to you?
That's a really difficult question.
I know. It's always the hardest.
I have many favorite K-dramas, but I was thinking that if there's one that, hits on all the points that I appreciate, all the elements that I appreciate in K-dramas, it's Itaewon Class. And that one features a main character who goes through so many tragic events in his life, it probably would have just broken the average person. But I think what impressed me about that particular show is that it had a lot of good lessons. If you think about your own work, most people don't really enjoy their jobs,
Mm.
and there's a good reason for it. This main character was somebody who appreciated, and actually his business mission was to develop employees who he could support and employees who became family. And the way he treated them was, I thought, extraordinary. Where the female lead actually displayed some, I'd say, sociopathic tendencies. But what was really cool with her, and I like really strong female characters, is that she was very blunt about her feelings. And she admitted as she grew, as her character developed, when she was wrong and why she did what she did. She was very out there and open with that. It had a great story. It was based on revenge, which a lot of K-drama stories are. But it was a wonderful story, and it had a wonderful soundtrack. And the soundtrack actually led me to K-pop. There was a song in there by a BTS member, and I fell in love with that. So,
Well, we love some good music here, and then watching TV shows, I think sometimes is the best way or a fun way to discover music that you never thought you would be exposed to. And Sheena, at the beginning of the hour, we heard from therapist and author Jeannie Chang, who talked about how K-dramas can help viewers tap into those deep emotions. Have you found that to be true for you?
Absolutely. I think that K-dramas aim to tap into an array of deep emotions, whether that be joy or laughter or sadness or despair, through excellent storytelling and acting. And I always joke that there are certain episodes of K-dramas that made me feel every human emotion. And I know Evelyn's nodding because she can certainly
yes,
think of one, and perhaps
absolutely.
you can as well. One thing I started practicing while watching K-dramas is to check into what I'm feeling at the moment, to sort of step back, or if a scene really touched me, to pause and say, well, what am I feeling right now? And to try to name my emotions so that I gain a better understanding of my experience. And then maybe I'll rewatch the scene again and sort of be with that emotion, even if it's negative, in order to be able to withstand it and understand it better.
And we only got about 2 minutes left here, but I want to get to Evelyn for some recommendations. What would you recommend people who would want to give K-dramas a try?
Okay, I used to recommend as a gateway drama back in the day to watch Goblin. It's also known as The Guardian, I think One Lonely God. I still recommend that one. I think it's got a lot to digest, and it's shot beautifully. It stars Gong Yu, and people who are watching The Trunk right now, this is definitely one of his past dramas that you want to see. But I've got sort of a quick list for dramas within the last 5 years that I would recommend
Give
for
us
various.
give us 3 of them.
Okay, Her Private Life for fangirling and adult romance. Be melodramatic if you want to see how K-dramas are produced. This is an excellent one. It also has wonderful friendships between 3 very strong women characters. And maybe Mr. Queen. I'm not hot on period dramas, but this one is also a time slip, and it's also a great comedy.
Well, thank you so much for that, Evelyn. We appreciate it very much. We have some K-drama recs from a 21-year-old college student, Violet Atkin, who suggests Strong Girl Bond Soon, 2017, that came out, Mr. Sunshine, and also Crash Landing on You. Thanks so much for that, Violet. And you've been listening to Evelyn Ingrid Smith, who's the founder of South Windsor K-drama Meetup Group, and also Sheena Williams, who's the organizer for the same group. Sheena and Evelyn, thank you both so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having
so
me.
much.
And before we head out, we have more recommendations from Facebook. Rahul Baroa says people should watch Stranger, a political thriller, which is also one of my favorites. I'm Catherine Shen. Today's show is produced by Chloe Wynn. Our technical producer is Dylan Reyes. Download Where We Live anytime on your favorite podcast app. Thank you so much for listening. And also, happy K-drama and C-drama watching, everyone.